Hi, Bob Rasooli, Orange County, California. Today, I want to talk about something you really need to know for the API 570 exam, and that is RBI. This is a topic that always shows up on the test, and it's also something you'll use in the field if you work with process piping in refineries or petrochemical plants. So, what is RBI in the API 570 world? API 570 is the in-service inspection code for piping, and it gives you two ways to set inspection intervals. First, you can use the traditional fixed intervals, which are based on corrosion rates or the service class of the piping. Second, you can use a risk-based inspection approach, which looks at both the probability of failure and the consequence of failure. The code points you to API 580 for the requirements of an RBI program and to API 581 for the detailed methodologies. API 580 explains the elements and responsibilities of an RBI program, while API 581 provides the calculations and risk models that go into making those decisions. Now, here are the exam requirements that you need to know. If you are using RBI, your assessment must be fully documented. It must be updated after every inspection or whenever you have a significant process change. And, very important, the RBI assessment has to be reviewed and revalidated at least every 10 years. That 10-year requirement is one of the key items exam questions focus on. Let me give you a refinery example. Think about a hydrocracker unit. These units run at very high pressures and use hydrogen service, which makes any failure potentially severe. A fixed interval approach might say to inspect the piping every 5 years, but RBI lets you look deeper. Maybe the main line has very low corrosion rates because it's made with upgraded metallurgy, so you can safely extend the inspection interval. But at the same time, you might find a small bore piping loop downstream of an injection point where ammonium salts could deposit. The risk there is much higher, so you would schedule more frequent inspections for that loop. That's the value of RBI. It lets you prioritize based on both probability and consequence. Here's another practical case. Imagine a reformer unit that just went through a major turnaround. During the turnaround, several piping circuits were repaired or replaced. When the unit comes back online, you now have a mix of new piping spools and older circuits. This is the perfect time to revisit your RBI. The new spools may not need immediate inspection attention, but the older circuits, especially those that were exposed to higher temperatures or cyclic loading, may need closer surveillance. By updating the RBI assessment after the turnaround, you are aligning your inspection plan with the current condition of the system. The code makes this clear. RBI is not a one-and-done exercise. It must be updated whenever conditions change, whether that's a new repair, a new process stream, or a change in operating envelope. The bottom line is that for your API 570 exam, you should know that RBI is about combining probability of failure with consequence of failure. It must be documented, it must be updated after inspections, turnarounds, or significant changes, and it must be revalidated at least every 10 years. Keep those points in mind and you'll be ready to handle the questions on this topic. And more importantly, you'll understand how RBI connects to real-world refinery practice.